A voice sliced through the air like a blade, tearing apart the luxurious stillness of the Valiant Hotel lobby. White marble reflected the glow of 10 grand chandeliers, yet the echo of those words made the place feel as cold as a courtroom. It was 10:42 on a Monday morning in Midtown Manhattan, a time when the lobby should have carried only the scent of Italian coffee, the hum of rolling suitcases, and the polished smiles of staff. Instead, it vibrated with disdain. Behind the front desk stood Victor Hale, the 48-year-old general manager, arms crossed over his chest. His chin jutted upward in arrogance, as if he were the owner of every brick in the building. Every gesture was deliberate, his voice projected just loud enough for everyone to hear, turning what should have been a private exchange into a performance of power. His target was a black man, about 45 years old, modestly dressed. Malik Arden. He wore a charcoal turtleneck that fit close to his frame, tailored travel pants, and weathered leather boots with scuffed toes. No watch, no briefcase, no bodyguards, only a small, rolling suitcase, its wheels scarred from countless airports, and a face that had witnessed far more than any insult could inflict. Malik said nothing. No protest, no anger, no explanation. He simply stood, eyes locked on Victor's, calm in a way that unnerved, as if weighing the value of silence itself. Victor's lip curled. "Security's coming," he added, voice hissing between his teeth like a nail driven into patience. "You can't just walk in off the street and claim a penthouse suite. It doesn't work that way here." The onlookers began to notice. A woman in high heels froze in front of the elevator. A bellhop wavered, the silver tray in his hand rattling. Behind a velvet sofa, a teenager lifted his phone, the red light flashing to life. Recording had begun. Malik's eyes swept the room, catching stares of curiosity, confusion, and a few hints of sympathy. This was not the first time. And Victor, certainly, was not the first man to stand in that position. Memories rose like scars that never fully healed. At 30, Malik had been escorted out of a conference where he was the keynote speaker, mistaken for a technician. At 37, a luxury car showroom refused to open a door for him, insisting he come back with the real buyer. Now, at 45, in a hotel built on loans his company had funded, the script repeated itself. The same contempt, the same skeptical eyes. Victor stepped forward half a pace, his tone tightening. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave before this gets worse." Malik did not move. His hand rested on the handle of his suitcase. He did not pull out his ID. He did not present a credit card. He did not justify himself. His composure stood in stark contrast to Victor's performative urgency. Yet he heard it all, the murmurs swirling around him, the soft chime of the revolving door still echoing, reminding him that just moments earlier he had entered quietly, without fanfare, no luxury car, no bodyguards opening doors. Only him and his worn suitcase. Perhaps that simplicity itself had made him a disruption in Victor's eyes. "You booked the penthouse?" Victor repeated, dragging the word penthouse out as if it were a joke. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Malik replied, his voice low and steady, like water cutting through stone. Victor snatched the ID and keycard from Malik's hand, holding them as if they might leave a stain. His eyes darted back and forth, then flicked toward the young staff member beside him, Lena Park, 23. She lowered her gaze, her hands frozen on the keyboard. She had seen that name on the VIP list earlier that morning, but in this heavy air of power and disdain, the confirmation caught in her throat. Victor tapped a few keys, pretending to search. A slight frown crossed his face, followed by a whisper sharp enough for Lena to hear. Another fake penthouse claim. Lena swallowed hard. She dared not argue. She barely dared to breathe. Victor returned the ID, slamming it onto the counter with intent. "There's an issue with verification. I need you to take a seat by the window over there. The chair for economy travelers, not for someone about to walk into a penthouse suite." A ripple of whispers rose. A couple paused their conversation. A guest lowered his coffee cup. Attention in the lobby shifted entirely toward Malik. Victor lifted his chin, raising his voice for effect. "Sir, as I said, please sit and wait while we recheck your details." Malik lowered his eyes, not from shame but from calculation. He drew in a long breath, steadying every heartbeat. Then he looked up, calm, and asked, "Are you certain you want to go down this path?" Victor's smile twisted, the smirk of a man convinced of his absolute authority. "Absolutely. We don't hand out penthouse keys for stories." Lena's eyes flickered toward Malik, and in that instant they held everything: helplessness, regret, and the dawning fear that her boss had just made the greatest mistake of his career. Victor lifted the desk phone, speaking loudly enough for all to hear. "Front desk, I need security in the lobby immediately." He paused, then added, "Guest shows signs of fraud. Possible fake booking." These words were no longer protocol. They were public humiliation. Malik stood motionless, his eyes blinking once as his hand brushed his phone, unlocking the screen, then closing it again. No wasted motion, no argument, no shouting. He was simply waiting. Waiting for something only he knew. In the corner, a woman in a navy pantsuit whispered to her husband, "He hasn't done anything wrong." A family at the coffee bar stopped chewing. The lobby, once alive with casual chatter, thickened with uneasy silence. Lena bit her lip, gathering the courage to whisper, "I could double-check." "No need." Victor cut her off with a flick of his hand, as if he were a judge reading a verdict. Footsteps echoed. Rafael Torres, the security officer, appeared. His frame was solid, posture rigid like a soldier. Victor pointed without hesitation. "That one. Non-compliant, suspicious ID. Claims to be VIP." Malik remained still, composed, his suitcase beside him, his hands in his pockets. A quiet so sharp it cut the air. "Sir," Rafael said firmly, "I need you to move to the seating area until we can confirm." Malik tilted his head slightly, his voice low and deep. "What reason is there for me to be treated as a threat?" Rafael froze. He had not expected the question. "No one is saying you're a threat, just asking you to comply." "Comply with what?" Malik pressed, voice steady as a razor's edge. "Stand still while your manager fabricates a story in front of this entire lobby?" Victor scoffed, stepping in. "You think this is about race? That's the card you're playing." Malik blinked slowly. "I'm not playing anything. I'm just standing here. The one taking action is you." The silence detonated like an explosion. Phones lifted higher, cameras locking in. From the corner, Caleb's shutter snapped, the dry click capturing the moment. The grand lobby was no longer a place to check in. It had become a stage, a courtroom without walls, where one underestimated man stood, not as someone being cast out, but as a judgment waiting to be delivered. Raphael's footsteps echoed against the marble floor like the drumbeat of a verdict. But Malik did not step back, did not flinch. He stood still like a statue that breathed. His eyes gleamed, not with fear, but with a light that was hard to rid. Calm, perceptive, and ready to ignite if necessary. Victor folded his arms behind Raphael, his expression smug, filled with the unshakable belief that he had already won, that the power of a uniform and the authority of the hotel system were enough to crush a man who had walked in without proving his worth at the very start. Yet the guests in the lobby saw something else. They saw a man surrounded, silent but proud, as the crowd around him grew quiet to hear even the rhythm of his breathing. At the coffee counter, a middle-aged man set his latte down, his deep voice carrying through the air. He handed over his card and ID. I saw it with my own eyes. Victor froze, rage flashing in his eyes. He shouted, "Sir, I demand you do not interfere! This is a security procedure." The man in the half-buttoned travel coat lifted his head, answering firmly, "Procedure is not the same as humiliation." The lobby erupted in whispers. More phones were raised higher, their lenses like third eyes capturing every detail. From the waiting area near the door, a teenage girl named Tessa leaned forward. Her voice rang out, steady and clear. "I'm live streaming. More than 2,000 people are watching, and they can see exactly who's wrong here." Victor's face burned red. He snapped toward Raphael, his voice sharp. "Move him aside. Right now." Raphael stepped forward, but his eyes met Malik's and held there, hesitant. Malik was not like the troublemakers he had escorted out before. There was no alcohol on his breath, no rage, no shouting. Only steadfast silence. "Sir," Raphael repeated, his tone softer now, "please cooperate. Don't make this more complicated." Malik tilted his head slightly, speaking slowly. More complicated, or more exposed? The air thickened instantly. That question hung heavy, cutting into everyone present. Suddenly, a sharp clatter broke the silence. From behind the desk, Lena Park, the young receptionist, had dropped her pen. Her eyes darted from Malik to Victor, trembling but flickering with resolve. Malik turned to her gently, asking, "You saw my name in the system this morning, didn't you?" Silence gripped the room. Lena bit her lip, clutching the folder in her hand. Finally, she gave a small but firm nod. "Yes, I saw it. VIP list. Penthouse." Her words fell like a stone into a still lake, shattering the illusion Victor had crafted. He spun around, shouting, "Be quiet! You're just a trainee. You don't understand anything." But it was too late. The phones had already captured it all. And Malik's gaze, a gaze that did not need to rise in volume, confirmed everything. He bowed his head slightly toward Lena, nodding, "Thank you. That's enough." Raphael stepped back, half a pace, like a soldier realizing the battle before him was no longer about order, but about shielding a mistake. He hesitated, looking at Victor. Victor tried to claw back control, his voice hissing, "He's causing a scene! This is a violation of protocol!" Another voice cut in, rising from the seats near the piano. Eleanor Pierce, a dignified woman with silver hair and a glowing pearl necklace, stood tall, her gaze icy. "No, I see clearly. He is not causing a scene. You are." Victor faltered. For the first time, the weapons he relied on, his booming voice, his commanding stance, had lost their effect. Caleb, the young man with the DSLR, snapped another series of photos, his lens sweeping quickly. Tessa lifted her phone higher, speaking into it. Now there are tens of thousands watching. They know his name. Malik Arden. The name landed like a hammer. Not because Victor recognized it, but because the guests had begun whispering among themselves. "Sounds familiar, Arden Holdings. Is that the company?" Malik remained silent, as if allowing the truth to rise on its own from the crowd. Then, from the concierge desk, a chair scraped back. Kenji Nguyen, 26, with a young Asian face, stared at his computer screen. His fingers trembled before he spoke up. "The name is here. Malik Arden. Penthouse. 3 nights. Fully prepaid. Corporate tier." Each word struck straight through the false authority Victor had built. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Eleanor's voice rang out again, crisp and unmistakable. "You see it now." This was no mistake. This was discrimination. The word sliced through the air like thunder. One word strong enough to turn this standoff into a case. Victor forced a smile, turning toward the crowd. "You all misunderstand. We are only following procedure." But Malik finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate, cutting through the air like a blade through silk. "Procedure never includes degrading a human being." The lobby fell dead silent. No rolling suitcases, no whispers, only Victor's ragged breathing and Malik's unshakable calm. In that moment, one truth was clear. Power had shifted, not from a suit or a title pinned to a nameplate, but from the weight of truth itself. And once truth had spoken, no one could silence it. Malik looked around, his eyes passing over each face. The guests were no longer passive spectators. They had become witnesses, and witnesses were the strongest weapon of all. He knew. This was only the beginning. The air inside the Valiant lobby thickened like fog. People held their breath. They waited. Everyone knew this confrontation had not yet reached its peak. And then, clack! The double doors behind the concierge burst open. Sharp heels struck the marble floor. A tall figure appeared, blonde hair tied back, a razor-cut blazer fitting like a blade. In her hand was a clipboard, the weapon of bureaucracy. Sloane Whitaker, 44 years old, director of hotel operations, a woman who often boasted that no guest had ever gotten past her. She entered not as someone trying to assess the situation, but as a judge arriving to close the trial. Her voice rang out, cold and precise. "What is happening here?" Victor exhaled in relief, as if clinging to a lifeline. He pointed at Malik, raising his voice so the entire lobby could hear. "This man refuses to cooperate, claims to have booked the penthouse without verification, disturbing guests and creating a scene." But Sloane did not look at Victor. Her eyes locked on Malik. One glance, filled with judgment. No expensive suit, no Swiss watch, no entourage, only a black man, alone with a worn suitcase. Her conclusion arrived faster than a blink. He did not belong here. "Sir?" Sloane lowered her tone, wrapping false courtesy around sharp dismissal. "If there has been any misunderstanding with your booking, I suggest you contact the legal department. For now, I require you to leave the hotel." The lobby froze. An invisible line was drawn, and everyone understood someone had just chosen the wrong side. Malik did not move. He stared back at Sloane, his gaze calm as a lake before the storm. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You've done enough. This is a luxury hotel, not a place to stir trouble. You are making people uncomfortable." From the nearby seats, the man in the black suit, who had introduced himself as a risk manager, shook his head and whispered. She didn't even check his name. The whisper spread. A current rolled through the crowd. Behind the concierge desk, Kenji's heart pounded. He knew the proof was right there on his screen. He knew the truth was within his reach. But Sloane was everyone's superior. One wrong move could end his career. Then Malik turned to Kenji. No words, only a look that forced him to choose, silence or justice. Kenji drew a breath, his voice trembling but steady. "Ms. Whitaker, his name is in the system. Penthouse, 3 nights, corporate tier, I confirm." Sloane snapped her head toward him, her eyes blazing. "Kenji, you have no authority." "Yes, I do," Kenji interrupted, raising his head for the first time against his superior. "Because it shows clearly. and the red flag only appeared after Mr. Victor accessed the file. The words dropped like shattered glass. Every excuse collapsed into dust. Victor's face turned pale. That's a coincidence. He doesn't understand. But it was too late. Phone swung toward Kenji's screen. The lobby did not just hear anymore. They saw. The truth glowed across every pixel. A murmur spread from the seats. Profiling. That's profiling. The word discrimination struck like thunder in their ears. No shouting needed. One word was enough to turn this confrontation into a case. Eleanor Pierce rose to her feet, an elderly woman, but her voice rang like a bell. I have seen enough. This is not procedure. This is insult. Sloane's composure cracked. She cut through the noise, eyes fixed on Malik. I don't care what the system says. You are making people uncomfortable, and that goes against the values of this hotel. She enunciated each word, clinging to the authority of her title, as if it could paper over the holes truth had already torn open. But then came a dry laugh. Malik's. A short, deep laugh, as though she had just signed her own self-destruction. Values? Malik asked, his voice sharp as steel. If this is how your hotel defines values, then in 5 minutes you will know what truly uncomfortable means. The lobby erupted in murmurs. Phones buzzed with live stream notifications. Tessa shouted, "Oh my God, more than 10,000 people are watching." Sloane smirked coldly. Are you threatening me? Malik shook his head, his eyes like ice. No, I'm informing you. In that moment, Victor shivered. A dark premonition crept into his chest. Yet he forced himself to yell, "Throw him out! Now!" Sloane nodded sharply, ordering Raphael, "Remove him. Immediately." Raphael hesitated. His eyes shifted from Malik to the raised phones around the room. He knew every move now was recorded. He was a soldier, but he did not want to be an accomplice. In that pause, Victor snapped. He stormed out from behind the desk, grabbing the handle of Malik's suitcase and yanking hard. The suitcase scraped across the marble floor with a screech, then landed with a heavy thud at Raphael's feet. Victor panted, shouting, "There! Take him out with his luggage! He's finished!" A sharp gasp escaped Eleanor. Lena raised her hand to her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. Kenji stood frozen. Even Sloane faltered for a beat. Malik looked down at his suitcase, the only thing he had brought with him, now dragged like evidence of an imagined crime. He bent slowly, picked it up, brushed the scratch with his sleeve, then rose taller, prouder. His eyes swept the room, landing on Victor, then Sloane. His voice rolled deep, heavy as a verdict. You just touched something that does not belong to you. And now he paused, letting silence fall. You just made your final mistake. The lobby went silent. Malik drew his phone from his pocket. One swipe, one tap, a connection tone rang. "Carla," he said evenly. "Begin." Protocol 5. A beep confirmed. A professional female voice answered, decisive and clear. Activated. Internal monitoring is live. All data from the past 45 minutes has been captured and stored. Victor froze. Sloane's brow furrowed, her voice cutting sharp. Protocol? What did you just do? Malik lifted his head, his eyes blazing. A protocol that records every act of bias and links it directly to your personnel files. In real time. The lobby broke in shock. Lena's jaw dropped. Kenji stared as his screen flickered. Audit mode enabled. Executive override. From the coffee counter, a hushed voice trembled out. Oh God, he wasn't bluffing. He was prepared from the start. The sound from Malik's phone echoed through the lobby. A female voice, crisp, professional, unwavering. Victor Hale flagged. Unauthorized override. Rebecca Langston, pending escalation. Security protocol tracking initiated. Victor's name rang out like a death knell. He jolted, snapping his head up, his voice breaking, "Flagged! What the hell, what did she just say?" The computer screen in front of Kenji flickered. A red banner flashed. Audit mode, executive override active. His fingers trembled, his eyes wide. He whispered, almost to himself, He wasn't joking. The system really has been taken over. Sloane stepped forward, struggling to reclaim control. "You have no right. This is the hotel's system, not your toy." Malik turned his head, eyes calm but sharp as a scalpel. "Not a toy. A platform I built. This system runs on the architecture of Arden Holdings. And he paused, letting the silence drop like a gavel, am the one who owns it." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Guests shifted from curiosity to shock. They turned to each other, whispering a familiar name, Arden Holdings. Victor thrashed against the inevitable. He shouted, finger stabbing toward Malik. "Who do you think you are? Some delusional guest? A hacker? I'll call the police." Malik arched a brow, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Call them, and let them witness exactly what you've just done to a fully prepaid guest. I'm certain the live streams out there will be very useful at the press conference." Victor's words caught in his throat, his face flushing red. He looked around and saw dozens of phones raised, lenses streaming live. The truth was no longer in his hands. It belonged to the public. Carla's voice continued through the phone, steady and precise. Front desk systems locked, all activity mirrored to Arden Compliance Cloud. Witness sync enabled. Eleanor Pierce, her pearl necklace glinting under the chandeliers, pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "My God, he had control from the start." Caleb's camera clicked sharply. Tessa leaned into her microphone with excitement. "Guys, he's flipping everything. The man they tried to throw out now controls the entire hotel." Sloane's face drained of color. She clutched her clipboard as if it were a shield. "You can't. You're not allowed to do this." "We have laws protecting us." Malik cut her off, his voice crashing like thunder. "Laws? You just trampled the law of justice. All I did was activate the monitoring protocol that was supposed to protect guests." Silence fell. This time, no one dared to interrupt. Kenji's eyes darted across his screen, his pulse racing. He watched line after line appear, every action Victor and Sloane had taken logged with timestamps. Uneditable, irreversible, replicated across the central system. Malik stepped forward, his voice low, yet resonating through the lobby. "You wanted a spectacle. Then watch. This is the consequence of what you sow." Victor stumbled back, sweat breaking across his forehead. You're destroying this hotel's reputation." "No," Malik answered firmly. "You did that yourselves when you decided that a man without a suit or a gold watch was unworthy of a penthouse." Eleanor began to clap. Once, twice. The sound rang through the lobby like a verdict. At the coffee bar, a couple followed. Then a few more guests joined in. Victor's face drained of blood. Sloane shook with fury, shouting, "Enough! This is not a courtroom!" Malik's gaze sliced back at her like a blade. "No, but every room holds its truth, and today this one has chosen to speak." Tessa raised her phone higher, speaking clearly into her live stream. "Do you all hear that? This is the difference. No shouting, no fighting. Just letting them expose themselves." Carla's voice rang again through the phone. "Employee Hale, Victor termination log drafted. Employee Whitaker, Sloane pending disciplinary escalation. Compliance escorts notified. Raphael took a full step back. His training had taught him when to engage and when to stay clear, and this moment was not one he wanted to share blame in. Folding his hands behind his back, his face hardened. I follow the owner's protocol, and the owner here is not you two. Victor's mouth hung open, eyes darting desperately for escape. You can't do this in front of the guests. Malik lowered his head, speaking slowly, each word pounding like a hammer. You made it public. Now you will face it public. One swipe on his phone. Carla's voice announced once more. Protocol 5, Stage 2 complete. Staff review initiated. Access for flagged employees will be revoked in 180 seconds. The number fell into the room like a countdown. 3 minutes. Sloane's hands shook, though she forced her voice to stay sharp. You have no authority. Malik turned back, a cold smile forming. No authority. I built this platform, every contract, every server. And now that very technology exposes your truth. That is authority. Kenji nodded, whispering, He's right, everything is stored. There's no denying it. A little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, asking softly, Mum, why are they being mean to him? The mother stayed silent, but her eyes shifted toward Malik, filled with respect. Victor panted, turning to Sloane. We have to do something. We can't let him. But Malik had already stepped onto the counter, placing his phone firmly on the marble surface, its speaker wide open. His voice carried strong and steady. Listen carefully. My name is Malik Arden. I am the founder and CEO of Arden Holdings, and this hotel, Valiant, is just one of my assets. Gasps rolled through the lobby like a wave. Someone whispered, God, could it really be him? The one who was on Forbes? Another guest nodded quickly. Yes. I remember the photo. He's the one who saved the hotel chain after the crisis. The truth erupted. The lobby shook. Victor staggered, his face drained grey. Sloane stood frozen, a clipboard clattering to the marble with a cold echo. Malik did not smile. He did not need to. His voice was steady, deliberate. I walked into this place not to be bowed to, not to flaunt power. I walked in as a guest, like anyone else. And you decided I had no value. That was your first mistake. He paused, letting the words sink into every soul, then continued. Your second mistake was believing I had no voice. 3 minutes. That number fell over the Valiant lobby like a funeral bell. The clock on Kenji's screen blinked, each passing second measured in heartbeats. Everyone understood. This was no longer about a penthouse suite. This was a public trial, and the judge's chair now belonged to the very man they had tried to cast out. Victor stumbled backward, sweat rolling down his collar, his fear mixing with arrogance, shattered to pieces. He shouted, his voice shrill. You can't do this! This is abuse of power! I'll sue! Malik turned his phone, its bright screen facing the crowd, his voice steady and deep. Not abuse of power. This is the process signed in the contract. Valiant operates on the Arden Holdings platform. Every audit, storage, and security system belongs to me. You all forgot one thing. I am not just a guest. I am the creditor, the system's owner, and the holder of this truth. The lobby erupted in murmurs. Some guests covered their mouths. Phones streaming live buzzed with comments flooding across the screen. Is he really the CEO? Real power doesn't need to be flaunted. This is justice. Sloane tried to steady her voice, but it quivered. Mr. Arden, if you truly are the man behind Arden Holdings, then you should have said so from the beginning. You caused all this misunderstanding. Malik's eyes cut toward her like blades. If I had walked in with bodyguards, a Rolex, and gold-embossed business cards, would you have dared insult me? No, you would have rolled out the red carpet. But I walked in as an ordinary man, and you chose to rip the carpet away. Eleanor Pierce broke into tears. The elderly woman clapped firmly, her eyes wet. Yes, that is the point. You treated him as an outsider until he revealed who he was. Her applause echoed. Then the man in the black suit, the risk manager, followed. One by one, hands joined in, not cheering, but heavy, like a collective confession. Victor collapsed into a chair, his face drained of blood. Sloane stepped back, her clipboard shaking in her hands. Carla's voice came through the phone. Stage 2 complete. Access credentials for flagged employees will be revoked in 60 seconds. 60. The number cut through hope like a blade. Victor lunged forward, his voice desperate. Mr. Arden Malik, I'm sorry. I was only following procedure. I never meant to offend. Malik held his gaze for a long moment, then answered coldly, You call it procedure. I call it arrogance, and arrogance always has a price. Sloane tried to cut in, her voice high-pitched, nearly screaming. You can't fire me in front of guests. I've given 15 years to this hotel. Malik tilted his head, his expression both sorrowful and sharp. 15 years and you still haven't learned humility. Then those 15 years taught you nothing. Carla's voice pressed on. 30 seconds. The lobby went dead silent. Guests holding their phones followed every beat of the invisible countdown with pounding hearts. Kenji's hand shook as he closed his laptop, but Malik lifted a hand, signaling, Keep it open. Let everyone witness. Lena stepped out from behind the desk, pulling off her name tag, her eyes red. She walked to Malik's side, her voice breaking. I'm not asking to keep my job. I just want to say this. I was wrong to stay silent. Silence is complicity. I don't want to be complicit anymore. Malik nodded. I will remember that. Kenji rose, his voice trembling but resolute. I request a transfer to another department, not because I am afraid, but because I want to learn to stand up at the right time. I want to learn from you. His words brought tears to some guests' eyes. Malik smiled faintly, a rare, warm but fleeting smile. You will have your chance. Carla's voice rang again. 10-9. 8. Victor panicked, rushing to the computer, pounding at the keys, but the screen glared red. Access denied. Sloane broke into sobs, clutching Raphael's arm. Do something. Don't let them take everything from me. Raphael pulled her hand away, stepping back, his voice calm and firm. I follow the orders of the rightful owner. And he is the true owner. 3, 2, 1. Every terminal at the front desk went black. Employee key cards clattered onto the counters. The system locked them out, as if they had never existed in the chain. Carla confirmed. Termination complete. Compliance escorts en route. Immediately the lobby door swung open. 2 men in black suits with earpieces walked in. Calm, steady, eyes cold, they approached Victor and Sloane. Please come with us. We will escort you out of the building. Victor staggered, screaming like a drowning man. This is humiliation. I have connections. I won't stand for this. Malik replied evenly. Then tell them what happened this morning. Show them the footage. Let's see if they still want to be your connections. Sloane said nothing. She walked in silence, her heels striking the marble like coffin nails. The crowd parted, leaving a path. No applause, no farewell, only silence, the kind that turned a grand hallway into a corridor of shame. Malik stood at the center, neither smiling nor triumphant. He didn't need to. The truth had done everything. He nodded slightly to Lena, to Kenji, then turned to the lobby, his deep voice carrying, "Justice does not need to shout. It only needs to stand firm." And today, justice stood here. The lobby doors closed behind Victor and Sloane, leaving behind a chilling silence. The echo of their heels faded, like funeral bells tolling for a fallen era of management. Guests remained standing, phones still raised, but no longer just to record. They were remembering. Malik Arden stood in the center of the lobby, his hand resting lightly on the marble counter. The glow from 10 chandeliers reflected against his charcoal turtleneck, casting a figure both composed and unyielding. He did not smile. He didn't need to. True power did not need a triumphant grin. It revealed itself in silence. Carla's voice came once more from the phone, firm and professional. Termination confirmed. Access revoked. Incident archive secured. Regional HR and PR teams already notified. A collective sigh swept the room, as though they had all witnessed a public sentencing. Lena Park pulled the name tag from her collar, her hands trembling. She stepped closer to Malik, her eyes red. I don't want to stay silent anymore. I knew your name was on the VIP list, but I was afraid. I let fear outweigh justice. Malik looked at her, his gaze not condemning, but reflective, like a mirror. You spoke, at the right time, and that was enough to change the outcome. His words broke her. Tears streamed as her knees buckled, but Malik gently lifted her. He would not let her kneel. Stand up. Justice does not need kneeling. It needs resolve. The lobby held its breath. A few guests clapped softly. Kenji Nguyen stepped forward, his hand still shaking with adrenaline, his voice stronger than before. Mr. Arden, I don't want to leave this company. I want to transfer, to learn from you. I want to understand how to use truth to protect, not to humiliate. Malik nodded, the faintest, rare smile appearing. You will learn. And then you will teach others. A sniffle came from the coffee bar. The young girl tugged her mother's hand, wide-eyed. Mum, he's like a superhero. The mother pulled her daughter close, answering softly, but loud enough for a few nearby to hear. No, sweetheart. He is just someone who refused to stay silent when others tried to make him small. And that is what makes him a hero. Her words spread, stirring the crowd. Malik turned to the guests, his voice rolling steady, like waves against the shore. I do not need anyone to call me a hero. I only need you to remember this. Sometimes silence is stronger than a shout. Because silence is not weakness. It is proof of certainty. Carla interrupted, her tone decisive. Mr. Arden, Phase 3. Escalation is prepared. Do you wish to proceed? Malik's eyes swept the room. Every gaze was on him. Guests, staff, and the countless phones streaming to the world. He drew in a breath, then answered, Proceed. A red light flashed across Kenji's screen. New text appeared. Stage 3, immediate review. Carla continued. Public compliance report will be issued within 12 minutes. Legal, HR, PR synchronized. All flagged misconduct archived. Media sync pending. Victor and Sloane might have stepped onto the street, but their sentence had already spread far beyond the hotel walls. Malik lowered his voice, just enough for those close to hear, yet heavy enough to echo in every heart. You thought I was defeated, because I entered as an ordinary guest. But the truth is, I have been preparing for this moment for a long time. Because I know this world is full of doors that refuse to open for people like me. He turned to Lena, then to Kenji. But today, I didn't stand alone. Truth has its own voice, and you chose to listen. The lobby erupted into applause, not loud but relentless, like a shared heartbeat. Eleanor Pierce stepped forward, her hands trembling but her eyes proud. "Mr. Arden, I have lived 70 years, and rarely have I seen justice so clear. Thank you, and forgive me for being an unwilling witness to their disgrace." Malik bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect. "You are not disgraced. You are a witness, and witnesses are the power that force the mighty to bow." Caleb raised his camera high, his lens flashing. Tessa shouted into her live stream, "Did you all hear that?" He just said something that will go viral. Witnesses are the power that force the mighty to bow. Comments flooded the screens. Carla's voice, "Cut in. Mr. Arden, compliance escorts have confirmed removal. Building management has been informed. Do you wish to appoint interim staff lead?" Malik turned to Lena and Kenji. He paused a moment, then replied, "No, I want this desk left empty. So whoever stands here next will remember this moment. Never forget this silence." The lobby hushed again. They all understood. No promises were needed. That emptiness itself would be the mirror that warned anyone who might dare disrespect a guest again. Malik adjusted his collar and pulled his suitcase to his side. He needed no porter, no bell. He turned to Raphael, nodding. The seasoned guard returned the gesture with a crisp salute. Quietly, for Malik alone, Raphael said, "I have seen many guests, but no one has ever turned silence into a weapon like you." Malik replied softly, "Sometimes silence is the loudest explosion." He turned, walking slowly toward the elevator. Each step echoed on the marble, reminding everyone that true power did not lie in suits or titles, but in confidence, in standing tall when others tried to force you low. The elevator doors opened. Malik stepped inside, alone. But this time he was not solitary. Behind him were hundreds of eyes, thousands watching live, and millions who would see it later. The steel doors closed, but the lesson remained open. The elevator doors had not yet closed, but the entire lobby already understood. What had just happened was no longer about a single room. It was an unmasking, and the man they once thought was just a passerby had become the eye of the storm. Malik Arden did not leave immediately. He stood at the threshold, turning his back to the elevator to face the crowd. His eyes swept across every face, trembling employees, stunned guests, phones streaming to the world. He walked back to the front desk, his old suitcase scraping across the marble, the sound cutting cold like a line drawn beneath a verdict. Malik set the suitcase down, pulled out his phone, and pressed the speaker. Carla's voice rang through the lobby. Protocol 5, Stage 3. Full compliance review initiated. Termination logs for flagged employees queued. Access revoked in progress. Victor Hale and Sloane Whitaker had already been escorted out, yet their names still echoed like a warning bell. Those who remained, Lena, Kenji, Raphael, stood frozen. Malik leaned on the counter, his voice steady, each word slicing through the air. "You want to know who I am? Fine, I will tell you. But remember, not to prove myself to those who belittled me, but to remind everyone of this. Sometimes power enters a room without introduction. It only needs to stand still and let truth reveal itself." He lifted his head, his eyes blazing. "I am Malik Arden, founder and CEO of Arden Holdings Group. This hotel chain, including Valiant, operates on the infrastructure I signed to build. And today, I entered not as an owner, but as a guest. And it was that role you failed to respect." The lobby broke into gasps. A few guests covered their mouths. A young man stammered, "My God, it's him, the one who was on Forbes, The one who saved the hotel chain from collapse after the crisis. Eleanor Pierce rose, her voice sharp as steel. You treated him like trash until you knew his name. That is the real disgrace. Kenji inhaled deeply, every cell in his body trembling. He whispered, "No one can deny it anymore." Malik raised his phone. Carla continued, "Compliance escort dispatched. PR teams notified. Audit logs synced with corporate servers. All witness footage mirrored." The guests' phones vibrated in unison. The videos they had recorded were already backed up in Arden Holdings' system. There was no erasing, no escape. Malik lowered his tone, but every word rumbled like thunder. "I did not come here to show off. I came to remind you, justice does not need adornment. It only needs to rise at the right moment. And today, justice stood in this lobby." Rafael Torres, the security officer, instinctively straightened, saluting in military fashion. No order compelled him, but respect did. Malik gave a small nod in return. Lena Park stepped forward, still clutching her name tag, her eyes glistening. "Sir, I know I stayed silent too long. But if you allow, I want to begin again, not to keep my job, but to do what is right." Malik's gaze softened, steady yet kind. They say silence is complicity, but sometimes one word at the right time is enough to save the truth. You spoke, and it was enough. She cried, this time with relief. Kenji clenched his fist, his voice clear. "I want to learn how you walk into a room without shouting, yet make the whole world listen. I want to learn how to do it with truth, not status." Malik nodded. "You will learn, and you will teach the next generation. That is legacy." From the corner, Tessa lifted her phone, the live stream still rolling, hundreds of thousands watching. Her voice trembled. Everyone he just spoke about legacy. This isn't just the story of one hotel. This is how we rewrite the definition of fairness. Caleb snapped another photo. In the frame, Malik stood tall beneath the chandeliers, surrounded by witnesses who trembled, yet looked up at him with reverence. Malik pulled his suitcase, his voice rising one last time before stepping into the elevator. "Never forget. I do not need to enter with power. I only need to enter with truth. And truth, once revealed, cannot be erased." The elevator doors closed, this time for real. But that moment etched itself like a photograph into the memory of everyone who had been there. The elevator doors closed behind Malik Arden, but the resonance did not fade. Instead, it reverberated back through the valiant lobby, leaving behind a dense silence. Everyone stood frozen, as if afraid that even the smallest movement might shatter the sacredness of the moment. The chandelier still cast its golden light, but now it no longer illuminated the false authority of Victor or Sloane. It shone straight down onto the marble floor where Malik had once stood, etching the truth like a scar that would never fade. Eleanor Pierce wiped her tears and whispered to the man beside her, "Do you see?" He didn't need to shout, didn't need to strike back. He just stood there, and the truth itself delivered the verdict. The man in the black suit nodded slowly. "I have managed risk my entire life. But today, I learned the most important lesson. The greatest risk is not in numbers, but in arrogance that disregards humanity." In the corner, Tessa still held her phone, eyes wide, breath sharp. She pointed the camera toward the marble floor. Everyone he just left. "But I swear, it feels like he's still here. Not because of power, but because we all know. Truth just won." Her screen flooded with comments. "This is the definition of justice. I have chills. Share this video. The world needs to see." Caleb snapped a few final photos, then lowered his camera with a long sigh. This moment will go further than any picture I've ever taken, because it is not just an image, it is a collective memory. Lena Park sat down, clutching the name tag she had removed. She whispered like a confession, "I was afraid. I let Mr. Victor drown out what was right." But then, Mr. Arden, he showed me that a single word at the right moment can turn everything. Kenji stood beside her, nodding. We are no longer just employees. From now on, we are witnesses, proof that truth cannot be silenced forever. In the center of the lobby, scattered claps began to echo. Not in unison, not loud cheers, but slow, deliberate applause. Like a vow, we saw, we heard, and we will not forget. A little girl tugged her mother's hand, asking softly, "Mum, why did they treat him that way?" The mother bent down, smoothing her daughter's hair, her eyes stern, because they forgot one thing. The value of a person is not in their clothes or their name tag. It is in how we treat each other. And today, they paid the price for forgetting. Her words spread like a quiet flame. A few guests murmured in agreement. A middle-aged man pulled out his phone, quickly texting a colleague, "I just witnessed history." From the phone on the front desk, Carla's voice returned, softer this time, like the closing of a ceremony. Compliance report submitted, legal team notified, public relations engaged, incident sealed in archive. Rafael Torres, the security officer, exhaled heavily, his broad shoulders sinking. He stepped into the middle of the lobby, unclipped his radio, and placed it on the counter. His voice rumbled deep and certain. "I have served many bosses, but this is the first time I've seen someone command an entire system without raising his voice. From now on, I will remember his name as a lesson." Eleanor clasped her hands at her chest, eyes lifted to the high ceiling. Some days you think you are only going for tea, but you end up witnessing a chapter of history. For the first time since the ordeal began, Tessa lowered her phone. She looked around, her voice small but resolute. "I won't delete this video. I'll let the whole world see exactly how the truth unfolded." Lena gripped Kenji's hand, her voice trembling but firm. "From now on, I am not afraid. I have seen that truth can win, and I want to live that way." The lobby filled with a shared sound, not cheers, but a collective breath, an invisible affirmation that no one would leave unchanged. Outside, a black SUV pulled away from the hotel, carrying Malik Arden into the distance. But inside, his footsteps still lingered on the marble, like an invisible engraving. Never underestimate a man simply because he chooses to walk quietly. A freelance journalist muttered under his breath, scribbling into his notebook. Today. Truth wore a charcoal turtleneck, carried an old suitcase, and walked into a 5-star hotel. When it left, it didn't need to shout. It left behind silence heavier than 1,000 accusations, and that silence would echo forever. Out on the street, Malik Arden's black SUV rolled past rows of glittering glass buildings. No sirens, no escorts, only the familiar stillness. But inside the Valiant Hotel, the aftershock still trembled, like ripples on a lake after a boulder had sunk to the bottom. In the lobby, dozens of phones still glowed. Tessa Reid's live stream had surpassed 200,000 live viewers. Comments poured in without pause. Watching from London, chills all over. This will turn into a massive lawsuit. Repost it! The world needs to know. Tessa lifted her face, whispering into the microphone. You all saw it. He didn't need to shout. He just stood still, and the entire system bowed. I've never seen anything like this. In another corner, Caleb Stone uploaded a series of photos to his profile. One shot of Malik bending to pick up his suitcase, brushing off the scratch, then standing tall and proud in the lobby. Within 10 minutes it had been shared thousands of times. Caleb's caption read, "They tried to make him small, but he chose to stand taller." Eleanor Pierce lowered herself onto a velvet chair, her hands trembling, but her eyes blazing. She turned to the server bringing tea, her voice firm. "Tomorrow, I'll call the paper. This editorial needs to be published. People must read how an ordinary guest taught an entire hotel about respect." The young server's heart raced. He knew she was on the editorial board of a major newspaper. A new wave was about to break outside. Kenji Nguyen still stood before the darkened screen, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We just witnessed a lesson that will be replayed in every HR training. From now on, no one will dare use the word procedure to cover for discrimination." Lena Park sat beside him, tears dripping onto the name tag in her hand. She whispered, "It's not that I lost my job. It's that I escaped silence." Her words stilled many guests. A young woman repeated them on her live stream, and soon they became the hashtag #EscapeTheSilence across social media. Rafael Torres, the security officer, stepped away from the counter. He removed his gloves, glanced around, and spoke slowly. "I used to think my duty was to protect the hotel. But today I realized my duty is to protect fairness inside the hotel, and fairness chose to stand with Mr. Arden." Scattered applause rose again, not wild but solid, like the gavel strike of a verdict. Outside, the SUV stopped at a red light. Malik sat quietly, his eyes fixed on the golden Valiant sign reflected in the glass. The driver asked softly, "Sir, would you like to call the press right now?" Malik shook his head, his voice calm. "No, they already have everything. Just let the truth walk its own path." He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Not to rest, but to feel the silence he left behind. Because sometimes the silence of hundreds of witnesses echoes louder than any chair. In a high-floor hotel room, a group of international business travelers had just finished a Zoom meeting. A white man holding an iPad trembled as he said, "I just saw the live stream. That was Malik Arden, the owner of the company we're negotiating with." The room fell silent. A blonde woman sighed. "God. We were just discussing investing more into Valiant. There's nothing left to discuss now." They did not know Malik had already anticipated this. He didn't need to issue a command. The images alone were enough to make contracts tremble. Back in the lobby, Tessa ended the live stream, but the video auto-saved. She exhaled, sitting down, her heart still racing. Caleb set down his camera, smiling at her. "You just changed an entire generation, you know?" Tessa smiled, her eyes glistening. "No. Mr. Arden changed it. I was just the microphone." Eleanor heard her, nodding gently. "But it's the microphones that wake the world, because a lesson untold will be buried like dust beneath a rug." Malik opened his eyes as the car moved again. He unlocked his phone, the screen overflowing with notifications. Videos, photos, hashtags, news, his name everywhere. He sighed, not from exhaustion, but a quiet peace. He whispered to himself, "No one is born to be welcomed in every room, but we can choose how to enter, with truth and with dignity. And when we do, the room must change." If anyone had heard it, that whisper would have become a timeless quote. But Malik spoke it only for himself, to remember why he had walked into the Valiant lobby that morning. Inside the hotel, Kenji and Lena stood with a few others around the silent front desk. They did not speak much. They just stood there, staring at the emptiness Malik had left behind. A young employee murmured, "It looks like an empty throne." Kenji shook his head, straightening his tie. "No, it's a mirror, so whoever stands there next will see themselves and ask, 'Am I worthy?'" Guests departed the lobby, but none left in silence as they had arrived. They whispered, they debated, they called. One man told his partner, "I just watched the CEO of Arden Holdings humiliated in his own hotel, and then turn it all upside down. This is no rumor. This is truth." The news burst beyond those walls, across the boulevard, up through social media, into the skyscrapers where billion-dollar contracts waited for signatures. On the boulevard in front of the Valiant Hotel, the black SUV slipped away quietly. No sirens, no escorts, only a slow movement, as if the whole world was making way. Inside, Malik Arden sat in thoughtful silence, but outside, the wave of truth had only just begun. In the lobby, Tessa Reid's live stream had surpassed 500,000 viewers. Social media platforms erupted with hundreds of thousands of comments and shares. The hashtags #JusticeAtValiant and Escape the Silence shot straight to the top of the trending charts. A man in Paris wrote, "This is not just a story about a hotel. This is a wake-up call for every service industry." A woman from Nairobi commented, "We've lived through this before. Thank you for standing tall." Caleb Stone posted the defining photograph. Malik standing upright, suitcase in hand, chandelier light spilling across his shoulders. The caption was simple. They tried to bring him down, but he chose to stand taller. The image spread like wildfire, cited by international outlets within minutes. Eleanor Pierce pulled out her phone, calling the newsroom. Her words were short but resolute. "Tomorrow, I want this story on the front page. Not in the entertainment section, in the editorials. Because this is a lesson for society, not just a hotel." Lena Park sat alone by the window, staring at the name tag in her palm and whispering, "I thought I lost everything." But no, today, I found my voice again. Kenji Nguyen placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes lit with new conviction. "From now on, I'll never let so-called procedures be used as weapons again. Justice must be part of the process, not its victim." Rafael Torres, his weathered face grave, glanced around the lobby as it emptied of guests. He murmured, just loud enough for Lena and Kenji to hear, "My job is security. But this morning, I learned my true duty. Real strength is not in muscle. It's in choosing to stand on the right side." In a Manhattan high-rise, the Valiant Board of Directors received a flood of urgent emails. Urgent incident report. They opened them to find images, videos, and system logs, all synced from Arden Holdings. A young director stammered, We can't cover this up." Another snapped, "Cover it up? It's already gone global." Every eye turned toward the empty chair at the head of the table, Malik Arden's chair, and they understood. He didn't need to be present. His authority was already everywhere. Back in the SUV, Malik unlocked his phone. Dozens of messages from lawyers, partners, and friends filled the screen. He scrolled past them all, then stopped at a video. Tessa's live stream. His own image standing in the lobby, silent, while the world held its breath. He watched for a long time, then smiled faintly. A rare smile. Not of pride, not of triumph, but of confirmation. The silence he had chosen was finally heard. He spoke softly, almost to himself. Justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs to be seen. In the lobby, guests slowly departed, but none left with the same mindset they arrived with. A couple whispered, "Tomorrow, we'll tell this to our children. They need to know what it means to stand tall against injustice." A little girl tugged at her mother's hand and asked, "Mum, can I be like him?" The mother bent down, answering firmly, "You don't need to be like him. You only need to remember never to be silent when you know what is right." Elsewhere in the city, a television reporter prepared a breaking segment. The draft headline scrolled across the screen. "CEO of Arden Holdings denied service inside hotel under his own group. Fires management on the spot." The anchor sighed. "This isn't ordinary news. This is a turning point." Malik leaned back, eyes closed, as the SUV turned onto Fifth Avenue. Noon sunlight cut through the glass. He no longer thought about Victor or Sloane. He thought of the faces that had spoken up. Lena, Kenji, Eleanor, even the little girl. He whispered, "They are the reason I do this." Carla's voice chimed in his earpiece. "Mr. Arden, the media is requesting an official response. Do you wish to issue a statement now?" Malik opened his eyes, looking out at the restless city. He shook his head with a calm smile. "No, the truth has already spoken. I only need to move forward." The SUV blended into the traffic, but the story did not end there. It had already broken past marble walls, crossed the boulevard, spilled beyond the city, and into the hearts of millions. Because today, people had not just witnessed a CEO flipping the script. They had witnessed a man underestimated, then standing tall enough to make the entire world look at itself. In the radiant, valiant lobby, everything had quieted down. The chandeliers still glowed, the chairs and tables remained in place, but no one could see them the same way again. Because where insults once rang out, only one truth now remained. Dignity cannot be bought, cannot be denied, cannot be extinguished. Malik Arden had entered that hotel as nothing more than an ordinary guest, with no business card, no bodyguards, no lavish facade. He was underestimated, dismissed, pushed to the margins. But he walked out as his true self, a founder, a leader, and above all, a living testament to silent justice. That story will be told again and again, not for pity, but as a reminder that anyone who builds power on arrogance and discrimination will, sooner or later, collapse under the weight of truth. And Malik proved one thing: you do not need to shout to be heard. You only need to stand firm, remain steadfast, and let justice speak for itself. From this day forward, every step that passes through the valiant lobby will carry a shared memory. They once witnessed truth standing tall while deceit was brought to its knees.